come on, one more bite won't hurt. We have all heard a line like that before, right? In fact, I think we've probably all said a line like that before at some point in our lives. So stick around today because we're going to talk all about food pushing. We're going to talk about what it is, why people do it, and what you can do to combat food pushing. Welcome back to Healthy Christian Living with Ruth and Casey. Today, let's get right into the topic of food pushing. What is it? Okay, well, my definition of food pushing is this. When someone pressures you to eat more than you want, to eat something that you don't want, or to eat off of your current eating plan. Food pushing is something that happens all the time. And like I said, I think I have been guilty of food pushing. I'm sure you can think of times when you've been guilty of food pushing. There's so many reasons why we are food pushers in our culture, in our society. And I want to talk about that for just a minute. Why does this happen? Okay, well, I think there's a lot of reasons. But before I talk about those reasons, I just want to say that when you are the one who is experiencing the food pushing, because you are working on creating healthy habits, because you're working on losing weight, because you are, trying to treat your body like a temple, not a trash can, it can be really hard to stand up to the pressure because often a no does not suffice. Often one no to a food pusher just keeps them, they just keep pushing more and more and more. And sometimes they can be relentless about it. And so this is really a challenging topic. And especially when it comes from, people that we love, because we don't want to upset them. We don't want to offend them. But we still have to be the stewards of our own bodies, right? Nobody else gets to decide what we choose to put into our bodies as food and nourishment, as fuel and nourishment. And so that's why we have to learn how to respond kindly to when food pushing happens. So let's talk about some reasons why food pushing actually happens. And first, I just want to say, I think you could break this down into two separate categories. Okay, the first one is where people are actually trying to be kind. The second one is where people are actually trying to be unkind. And you know what? Both exist. And even when people are trying to be unkind by food pushing, a lot of the time I think it's unintentional. It's just that they're afraid. It's that your change that you are trying to make in your life to get healthier, to lose the weight, it spotlights to them the fact that they are still stuck. They want what you're doing, but they aren't ready to start making those changes yet. And so you making the changes is just highlighting what they perceive as their own failures. So why do people push food? Why is this even a thing? Well, I want to say that a lot of times it's because as a culture, we like to show love through food. We use food to celebrate. We use food to encourage. We use food to soothe our emotions. We use food for traditions. We use food to celebrate. I always like to think about the example of a birthday party. Now, in our culture, birthday parties and cake are synonymous. It's almost like you can't have a birthday without a birthday cake, right? And so if you show up at a birthday party and that piece of cake doesn't fit within your current eating plan today, or maybe you're full and you don't want that piece of cake, when you say no, it's almost like you're breaking a tradition, you're breaking a social norm, and that can be really challenging for people to accept. So I think we push food because food is love, food is comfort, food is all of these things in our culture. And, I think those are often because people are trying to be kind, because they're trying to have traditions and all of those things. And maybe they've worked hard to prepare that piece of cake, for example. Maybe they've worked hard to prepare the food that you are saying no to. And so it almost is offensive to them when you say no thanks. So that's one reason. I think another big reason is that, like I already said, they maybe don't actually want you to change, because the thought of you changing leaves them with a fear of being left behind. Because they know that if you change and become this new person, they are still going to be stuck where they currently are. And I want to talk about that for a minute because, when you think about losing weight and starting a health journey and starting a weight loss journey, you have come to a position where the pain of staying the same is too great. And so you are willing to take on the pain of change or the challenge of change, because the pain of staying stuck where you are, you're done with it, right? You've gotten to that low point where you have decided to take it on and make the changes. The pain of staying the same is too great. But the person who's pushing the food, chances are they have not experienced that. They're not on the same journey as you. They don't feel like the pain of staying the same is too great yet. And so we can't expect them to understand how we feel and what our journey is. And so, I often just like to preface these types of conversation with that thought process, because it helps to understand that, maybe they just don't understand your journey. And they can't, because they aren't you. They haven't experienced that low moment of desperation where you're willing to do what it takes to make the changes. So, that points me to another reason why I think food pushing exists, and that's because the other person who's pushing the food sometimes feels really bad about themselves. And so, making somebody else eat makes them feel better about where they're at, right? That's another reason. Another one is because a lot of people use food as this love language, right? And so when you say no, you are essentially making them feel like they are unworthy, because they're looking to you for this affirmation about what they have made for you. And I know that I felt like that before. When somebody says no thank you after I have worked hard to make a meal or make a dessert, it can feel kind of bad inside. So there's so many different reasons why food pushing happens. Another one is because sometimes, this goes along with one of the other ones, sometimes people just are trying to sabotage your efforts because, again, they just don't want you to change. And whether they know intentionally that they're trying to sabotage your efforts, or whether it's a little bit unintentional, it's still sabotage. And so you and I both know that when somebody is pushing food and you have said no, and they keep pushing and they keep pushing and they keep pushing, it can be very, very hard to withstand that pressure. I want to remind you that the Bible tells us that there is always a way out of temptation. And I know that when people are pushing food, it's often a huge source of temptation, because it's usually what we want to eat right now in the moment. And we're trying not to, because we're trying to focus our efforts on, healthy decisions, on losing weight, on treating our bodies like a temple, not a trash can. And so overeating, or eating things that you don't want, or, eating stuff that doesn't align with your current goals, that's not really treating our bodies well. And so I think it's really important when food pushing is happening that we know and have a solid reason for why we are choosing the path that we're choosing. And when you think about deciding to treat your body like a temple, not a trash can, that can really help when you are trying to say no in a polite and kind way. Now, here's the thing. We don't want to come across as self-righteous when we tell somebody no thank you. We don't want to impose what we are doing or the lifestyle that we are living onto somebody else, because you know what? They choose what they do with their bodies just like we choose with ours. And so it's not about judgment. It's not about being self-righteous. It's about choosing what is right for you and your body right now. And, honoring, like I said, and stewarding the body that God gave you. And their decisions are different than yours, and that is okay. That's up to them to decide. That's not up to you to decide. Just like the reverse is true, right? It's not up to them to decide what you put into your body. It's up to you. And so knowing how to set clear and firm boundaries with food pushers is really important, and it can be really challenging. So, I often like to say clarity is kind. Even sometimes when it feels unkind, it's actually kind. So just to be able to say, no, thank you, I don't want to eat that right now. And they'll probably say, oh, one more bite won't hurt, or, oh, I worked really hard on this. And you know what? You can still compliment them on what they've done. You can still say, wow, that looks like a really delicious piece of birthday cake, but I don't want any right now. Maybe, and then you could maybe even make a suggestion that you could take a piece home for later when you are hungry, or something like that. But you don't have to eat when somebody is trying to push food on you. The other thing that I think is really important is to create a plan ahead of time for what you will do and what you won't do. Now, sometimes circumstances come up that we don't expect, right? Sometimes food gets pushed on us in like the weirdest times when it's not what we are expecting. And that's why it's important for you to have like an overarching plan and a plan for different events. Like if you know you're going to that birthday party, make a plan for what you are or are not going to do, and then execute your plan and then feel good about your plan. And so knowing what you will do in circumstances when it presents itself and you're not expecting it is also important. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is, if you know that eating cake right now is not in alignment with your goals, then know ahead of time that you would just say, no, thank you. I'm not going to have that right now. Know ahead of time that you've decided that cake is not part of what is aligning with your goals. Or if it is what's aligning with your goals and you only want a tiny piece, then you know ahead of time that, maybe once this week you're going to have a small piece of something. And so decide ahead of time and then execute your plan and then feel good about your plan. It's like that old saying goes, failing to plan is like planning to fail, right? And so you have to have a plan. You have to know what you are doing and what you are not doing and then execute. The other thing I want to say about what to do with food pushing is to work really hard at not taking it personally. And that can be challenging, especially when it's coming from people that we love. Maybe it's coming from a parent, maybe it's coming from a good friend, maybe it's coming from your spouse. Again, sometimes people push food for unkind reasons, but a lot of times it's because they're actually trying to show you love. And so sometimes when you know it's a person like that who's trying to show you love, sometimes taking the time to explain your journey, to explain your decisions to them in the right time is really helpful for them, and it's really important. So, maybe in the midst of the birthday party when the cake is being served isn't the right time to explain why you are choosing to say no, but maybe you need to schedule time to sit down with that person and explain to them, look, I am working really hard at creating some new healthy habits in my life, and so I would really love and appreciate your support. And so if I say no thank you, it's not meant personally, it's not meant that I don't like the food that you've made. It's that I am working hard at creating these healthy habits. Would you help me with that? So there's ways that we can frame the conversation so that it doesn't have to be offensive. And that's going to look different with every person. That's going to look different with every relationship. And it's going to look different with your decisions. And so I just want to encourage you by saying that when you are making healthy changes to your lifestyle, there are so many temptations around, and food pushing can be a really big one and a really hard one for us to manage. But we know that it says in Philippians that all things are possible in Christ, right? That's a paraphrase, but it says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. That means that we can figure out how to make the decisions that best align with our goals because we are working hard to treat our bodies like a temple, not like a trash can. So if you are still here watching, I would like to encourage you to subscribe to this channel. And you know what? Maybe put a comment below so that let us know if this is something that you want to learn more about, because food pushing is a really, really big topic, and we could talk a lot more about strategies for how to navigate it. So let us know in the comments if that would be helpful. Also, I just want to encourage you that you are a beautiful woman chosen for greatness. And when you are working hard to treat your body like a temple, not a trash can, I think that the enemy gets in there and starts working hard because he prowls around like a roaring lion. I said that backwards. And he knows where we are weak. And so we have to put on the armor of God every day because there is a way out of our temptations. So thank you for being here listening. And until next time, treat your body like a temple, not a trash can.